in there. Welcome to UPlift Black. I'm your host, Shelly Skinner, founder and president of UPlift Black. We're here today to increase the visibility of Black people living in smaller communities outside urban centers. And today, our guest is Ginelle Skerrit. Hi, Ginelle, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you.
Good, good. So, Ginelle, you are the program director and owner of Adinkra Farm.
Adinkra Farm.
Adinkra Farm, sorry.
That's okay, yeah. It is just a revolutionary pleasure to be here.
Yes, absolutely.
To talk about UPlift Black in Simcoe County and to talk about how Adinkra Farm can contribute to your mission. It's so amazing.
Absolutely. Like, I had known you from the community, and just recently I was able to take a visit to the farm, and it was just such a beautiful space. You can just tell that it's a very opening and welcome space. So I hope you should be really proud, and I'm excited to see the programs that are gonna come out of the farm. But I really wanted to kind of get to know you a little bit more today on the show, and give the audience an opportunity to get to know you and kind of what how you experience living Black in our community in Simcoe County. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, you know, it's been an interesting experience because I came here from living in Scarborough for 30 years or so, you know, and so it's different there, of course. And so you come to a community that I used to say that being here is like being in the 70s again in Toronto. You know, you don't see very many people of color, and the dominant culture is definitely European-centered and so on. I remember, well, I don't eat pork, right? And so you go to a restaurant here, and you might say, you know what, do you have turkey bacon or
Something a little bit
different. Do you have something without the pork? And what? No bacon? It's just such a thing. So it reminds me of this Saturday Night Live sketch where they only have hamburgers, but they have a whole bunch of stuff on the menu, and people come to order and they say, "Oh, hamburger." So that was my experience, and the feeling that we were sort of back in that time that I grew up in Toronto, which was very, you know, I had the experience of people having to say to me, "Oh, you can't, I play with you every day after school and so on, but today my dad's home, so you can't come inside because he doesn't let me play with Black people."
Yeah, I definitely had that growing up as well. Just some family members in the family, or like racist uncles, or people that would come around to the family. All of a sudden, my best friend I couldn't hang out with that day, or couldn't go to their birthday party or something like that. So I definitely feel you on that.
And my children were entering kindergarten and grade 5 at the time when we moved here. And so I was very cautious. And so my husband and I, we marched into the principal's office and we had the conversation at the very, very beginning. We said, you know, this is what our concern is, that this is a predominantly white community. We understand what that could mean, potentially. And we were assured that they wouldn't tolerate racism and so on. Needless to say,
didn't necessarily happen.
Yeah, you know, it didn't come from the kids, though.
Exactly.
It came in some cases from the school officials.
Yeah.
Now,
people who are being paid to protect your children and to teach your children.
That's right. Yeah, but I want to say that and put a little kind of endorsement of the wonderful teachers we also had.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were absolutely amazing teachers as well, and very uplifting for the kids. But those other experiences, they were the new terminology that we didn't have in the 70s and 80s is that they were microaggressions.
Yes.
You know, little things like telling my child that, surprised that he doesn't have rhythm since he's Black. It's like, and so my child is like, I'm a drummer. I have lots of rhythm. What is that teacher talking about?
And also, like, is that what teachers are supposed to do? So they're supposed to downplay people's skills or abilities, especially when it comes to something like dancing, which is supposed to be freeing and artistic, and it's not supposed to fit a category. He wasn't in dance school, was he?
Right, exactly.
So it's
it's a stereotype.
Yes,
it's an unfortunate stereotype that wasn't meant to uplift my child's self-esteem and sense of himself and so on. So those kinds of things were troubling, and you know, there's probably a million stories, but that just kind of is the brief of what I thought that we would have to protect our children from, and we did. And so, but we've made a conscious effort. Now, both of them have had a great experience here as well. And we set the expectation, though. That's one of the things. So you learn to cope with things by saying, and we have a mantra at home, the education system works for us. We are the taxpayers. And because mommy and daddy have to go to work, and we can't educate you necessarily ourselves, we send you to this place to get. But we are just as much interested. So we want to know what you're studying, what you're thinking about. And so little things, little tools and tricks that we taught the kids. So for example, my son was doing a speech. You have to do a speech. And his speech was about child soldiers. And of course, the lens through which that was projected was about child soldiers in African countries, la la la. So he did his on child soldiers internationally, and he talked about the cadets in Canada. Yep, and he talked about
very interesting
conscription in the United States, and so it was he broadened the scope of the topic and talked about indoctrinating young people into this military lifestyle. And then he came home and why the sour face? Well, this girl, she did hunger, and she only talked about Africa. There are hungry children
everywhere.
Right.
Even literally in our own communities in Simcoe County.
That's right.
We have hungry children. Yeah.
That's right. And so I think that part of countering the biases that they will experience is how we teach them at home, and how we teach them to look at what does education mean, and don't respect your teachers, but never believe that they know everything, because they haven't been taught the history.
No, absolutely.
And so they can't teach it.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I think you nailed it, where you are invested in your child's education as well, and you believe that that the education system is supposed to work for your family as every other family in our country.
That's right.
So it's very great that you are taking control as a parent. I know that as my own experiences, I grew up, and spent most of my time with my children as a single mom.
Right.
And I did really struggle for a period of time, helping with homework and with school. And I know that I felt for a long time like I was failing them, So there's always the added elements of how can you be a better parent or more involved in parenting. And it felt like any time I was involved in the children's education, it was to deal with some sort of microaggression that had taken place, where my kids had come home and they were upset about something, or it was the constant calls from the teacher telling me that my son was a problem. Yet every family member or friends of the family who had my son at their home for a lot of time, sleepovers and everything, when I'd pick them up, they would be like, what a well-behaved kid.
Yeah.
What a sweetheart.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm hearing that he's nothing but problems in class.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of difficult, because I felt like, okay, I want to be involved in the positive as well. It's not just always a negative experience when mommy's coming to school. I even at one time tried to join the parents council, and that was, and I tried to bring up some suggestions. I attended a couple sessions and realized that there was a lot of work to do that I actually didn't have time to commit to make that something that I can really give credit to and help really grow.
Yeah.
So I was a little disappointed that I wasn't to be more involved. How do you think us as parents can be more involved in teaching our children about anti-Black racism and the experiences, and in a way that they're aware of it, but they don't let it bring them down?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think what you're touching on is a dilemma faced by most parents of children who might face racism, whether they're Black children or some other, and that there is racial inequality that they're going to face, and they're going to come up against it. And so you're wondering to yourself, by taking this innocent child and exposing them to this information, am I introducing trauma? Or
That has actually been, I think, a lot of questions of a lot of parents, especially some mixed race biracial parents, where their parents are not Black. They don't know how to have the conversation.
Right. And so some of the things we fall back on, color doesn't matter. I've told my children, look, your color is absolutely something that you can't kind of hide from, get away from. And if people say they don't see it, they're not seeing you. Right? It's there.
Yeah.
See it. What you don't want to do is be judged as being less than because of it.
Yeah.
Right? And so, we kind of have those conversations, training them on things like when you're reading a book at school, or when you're watching a movie, or when there's an example given.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, where were the Black people when this was happening? Because we're excluded from a lot of the stories.
Yes,
we're excluded from a lot of the shows, the movies, unless they're focused on certain things. So another thing that is part of our upbringing of the children, and part of what we do in the programming too at Adinkra Farm, is that we're talking about the fact that we didn't begin with slavery. Slavery, we were enslaved people. It's something that happened to us.
Yes. Yeah.
And it is intergenerational trauma that we are carrying through, because it's not over necessarily. It's something that happened to our ancestors, and then over time there have been other forms of it that come about.
Yes.
And so right now those forms are things like the class to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
It's things, things like with the Children's Aid Society, there's a whole bunch of information coming out
With
about
streaming
children
in high school.
and children being taken, similar to what happened to the Indigenous people in terms of being taken from families and put into a system. So we try to show that you have to place yourself in the story, even if you're not there, and you have to ask those questions. So at home when we're watching a movie, and it's a movie about a loving family, and the Black characters or the Indian characters or the Chinese characters are off to the back somewhere. Or they're interacting occasionally. They probably are riding the bike to school with you, but they're not the central part of the story.
Absolutely.
Right? So we always say, well, what's that person's story? Think about it. Like what kind of family do they come from, and why aren't we seeing that family?
Yeah.
And why aren't we learning about them as being normal people? So the ways in which the children are exposed to information that actually denies their humanity, that's where we start. Question that, we say, right?
Yes.
Put yourself in there and ask, why is that story being told without me?
Yes.
Why is that story being told without people like me? And that kind of creates a critical analysis that we want the kids to have. But yeah, the original dilemma of, am I creating trauma for them? And where I've come with that, and where we have come with that as family, is that we have to give the children the tools to deal with what inevitably will come about.
Yes.
And I've talked to many people that don't have the dark complexion,
Yeah.
and they may not experience racism very
same way.
early.
Oh,
right?
yes. Or
But
the
it
same.
hits. It comes. They eventually, get to enjoy Blackness.
It's so true. It really is. Now, one of the things that I think is a good segue is to this book that I picked up that I will showcase. And this is B is for Black Girl. And it's by Channing and Chelsea Malin. And it says, B is for Black Girl, celebrates all things Black girl, one letter at a time. This book was created to empower and inspire Black girls to embrace their uniqueness. B is for Black Girl authors, and asserts a positive representation of Black girl culture for all audiences. And that's a really important last line, for all audiences. I think that it's important that we expose Black culture and the Black community to people who are non-Black. And I think that it's a step in the right direction if we are looking for equity in our communities, if we're looking for empathy during the Black Lives Matter movement. I think that that's where a lot of the issues have laid, is just like there isn't any exposure. One of the reasons why this show was so important to me is because it's giving our audience within Simcoe and Muskoka and abroad, because it's an online show, it can go further, an opportunity to kind of get to know what it's like to be Black. So when you moved here, I know you talked a little about your own children's experiences. What was it like for you? I mean, every time I see you, you were dressed in these beautiful like African designed wares, and I think there was a story that you shared with me that I'm not going to put you on the spot, but if you want to share maybe a couple of your stories about even just walking around with this beautiful African, wardrobe. How has that been in Simcoe County?
It's really, it's been wonderful. Yeah. First of all, I get a lot of love. People stop me and say that they admire the colors, the vibrancy of the outfits. They tell me their stories about visiting Africa themselves, or being from there, having lived there. So it's a conversation starter in some ways, and that has been really, really very positive. There are times when it can sort of be a bit of, it's awkward, one might say. People make comments about, well, why are you dressing like that? But I don't dwell on that. And actually, I made up my mind that because it seemed to be so important to other people, and they want to sort of place you into a space like, are you dressing like that in protest or something? And I'm thinking, no, it's just an outfit. It's just, it's clothing. And I think it's important. The other thing about it, it didn't actually happen in Simcoe County, but in the community that I work in, there was a discussion among some of the women, and these were women of various different cultures, a lot of them new immigrants to Canada, and they were being asked to identify a hero, right? And one of them, to my surprise, said me.
Oh, wow.
Now, nice ego boost, but I was wondering what I'm curious about that. And she said, well, you wear your traditional clothing, you wear it proudly, and it gives me the courage and confidence to do the same. And so I just said, you know what? That's it.
You're making a difference.
I am not buying any more
non-African designers. Yeah,
that's right. And so I do. Now it has become a statement for me of that confidence, and I've had Black women come up to me and say, "Where did I could wear that?" So it tells me they're having a conversation about should I, what's accepted, and of course the issues we have regarding our hair, and trying to look a different way to meet a beauty ideal that is not celebrating ourselves. So books like this, very important. Teaching young girls to appreciate who they are. And to me, wearing the clothing has been a very significant part of lifting that stigma around just being Black and walking, in the world.
In the world. I love it. It's true. You actually have inspired me as well. When I found out, my ignorance, I automatically assumed that your family was from Africa. I mean, like the generation before. Obviously, we're all eventually from Africa. I just hit my mic. I'm gonna get in trouble. Anyways, but when I found out that you were actually from Trinidad, your family's from Trinidad, just like myself. I was so inspired to also, because I never felt like the clothes I was allowed to wear it. I was allowed to wear the African. I don't know why. That's part of growing up in in Canada and being so far removed from your history and your culture, that I didn't even see that as a possibility for me. And it has been very inspiring. And I've just recently started to wrap my hair, and I'm still learning how to do that properly. We talked about that.
I do workshops.
Yay!
For any young women interested in that, most definitely, because it's a journey. And
it is.
I remember when I first started wearing head wraps at work, one of my work colleagues, I was a fundraising manager at the time, someone walked up to me and said, "Bad hair day?" And I just said, no, actually, it's just a head wrap.
Yeah.
You know, so it's little things like that that make you feel like, okay, you know what, this is important to people for some reason.
Yes, it
what
really
I wear and what I choose to do with my hair. And that's one of the things that I think strikes me as something about wearing the clothing and walking through the world as I am, is that it in of itself is a political statement, and it bothers some people. And why do people feel as though they have a right to tell me how I should and what I should and what it means to be exactly that? So, but I'm glad that it has inspired you. And
Absolutely.
yes, you know, one thing, as you were talking before about this whole idea of race, and I wanted to say, is that we know that there is no such thing as race.
I know.
Right, we know this. There's culture.
There's culture,
And there's definitely racism, right? But the idea, once you know the truth of the fact of our connection, regardless of our skin color, these things are incidental.
They are.
Right? And we can
They're environmental is what they
are.
are.
Aren't they as well, you know?
That's what our skin complexion is. It's
just
based on our environment.
Right? And we can have more in common with people who phenotypically look the complete opposite.
Yes, isn't that the truth?
To us. And so really our search and our quest is about uplifting ourselves because of the existence of racism, but not uplifting ourselves to a point of superiority.
Absolutely.
And many times people misunderstand, because at Adinkra Farm we teach from an African-centered perspective. And I try to make it clear that African centering is kind of like what I was trying to do with my kids, and saying, you ask yourself, what was happening with the black people at that time?
What's missing?
But it's not the same as, you know, becoming somehow superior, because we're not. We're human. Everyone is human. But we're great. And we should celebrate that. But so is everyone else.
Exactly. Exactly. But the problem arises is that, you know, as much as we, or I am learning to understand that is the truth. And you have clearly understood that for a long time. It's still not necessarily the truth within our communities. And that's why it's so important to have places like the Adinkra Farm, you know, that is teaching that that Black is excellent, Black is beautiful.
Most definitely.
Right? And from that perspective of learning their culture and their histories and their excellence and how it has been erased. Right?
Right.
So I love it. So we always ask this one question. Well, but before, actually, no, I'm going to ask you a few extra fun questions.
Okay.
First of all, I'm having a great time talking with you. But I want to know just a couple more things that that you can share with me. We had tea when I was at the farm, but what is your favorite drink, alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
You know, I can't drink alcohol. It makes me ill, unfortunately, but I do like it. My favorite drink is sorrel.
A sorrel? Oh, yes. That's a, I'm not sure if it's from any other islands, but I know from Trinidad it's a very popular drink.
In Jamaica
thick and
too.
Sweet and delicious.
Now in Jamaica, they will have it with lots of rum, overproof rum preferably. And, and it's a festive drink.
Yes, it is.
Around. And we do put rum in Trinidad too, but just as a little taste, and it's all over the Caribbean and also in South America. And on the African continent, it's drunk as a tea because it has great vitamin C and so on. So when you get sick, it's drunk as like a tea. So they don't drink it like we do with, you know, cold as a cocktail. No, they drink it as a medicine.
I love it. That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
All right. Your childhood favorite TV show, if you watched?
Let's see, how far back in the childhood would we go? I would say I loved Good Times.
Good Times?
Yes.
That was great. That was fun. That's good.
Good Times.
Are you aging ourselves?
Yes, I know, maybe.
All right. Do you watch movies at all?
Oh, I do.
You do? What is like one movie that can continuously make you cry?
Ooh, continuously.
Even if you watch it again and again.
Right. Oh, geez, that's a tough one. No, you know what? I don't watch movies that make me cry per se.
You like uplifting things more?
Yeah, or comedies.
Yeah.
And
Okay, well, cry
action.
to the point, laugh to the point of crying.
Laugh
we
to the
go.
point of crying. I love The Princess Bride.
Oh, that is such a good one.
Love
That is a
that one.
classic.
Yes, it is.
Yes, I
Yeah.
love it. Good, good. All right. A person who you look up to or inspires you
Ooh.
currently. I mean, you know, I know that changes as people, you know, and there's probably a lot.
Yeah.
But who's somebody that like just really speaks to you?
It would have been my grandma.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She raised us, and you know, she was a widow at a very young age, but she always took in people who were less fortunate in the community. And her home was a meeting place. And even when we moved to Canada, and that's how I grew up. I used to laugh because, particularly at Caravana time, but at other times of the year as well, I would wake up in the morning and there'd be an uncle or an aunt at the kitchen table that I've never met before.
I love it.
Yeah.
There's so many aunties and uncles like I still have to meet as well.
Exactly. And I'm thinking, how are they related to me? And then the story would be, well, you know, not really related, you know, but they're your auntie. Okay, so just call them auntie. Okay, mama.
I think when it was at your house, you told your son to say bye to Auntie.
Yes, that's right.
I love it.
I know, we carry it on.
Exactly. Great. All right. So, who, if you could have dinner with, like tonight, right now, imaginary, fictional, alive, passed away, passed on.
Maya Angelou.
Yes, absolutely. What would you ask her?
You know, I think I would probably be awestruck and not say
Anything.
much at all.
You would actually just listen to her speak constantly.
I would just listen to her speak. Absolutely. And I would want to cook for her and find out if she liked the food. But yeah, I think I would just be absorbing her presence.
Her energy.
I can't think of a single question that I actually have for her. I just want to be in that, in her
I love it.
space.
Perfect. Good answer. Okay, so the final question that I have for you today, and it's a question that I ask every guest. What's really important with the Uplift Black show is that our viewers are looking for ways to support the movement. And so I want to ask you, what would be your call for change? What in your life right now, if you had seen something change or would help benefit the farm or the work that you're doing in the community? Give us a little bit of perspective on what that would look like and how to support.
Yeah. Well, I've thought a lot about that sort of a question because there was a kind of a tsunami of phone calls and emails and so on after George Floyd's death. And for someone who's been an activist and then not an activist in the same way, anyway, not walking with placards.
Are you ever allowed to not be an activist once you start?
That's
I don't
the
think
truth.
it happens.
And an educator, and then, I don't know if I can teach anymore this thing. I think that now there's really a need for people to have a personal journey with this.
Yes.
And to really, because that's where the change actually happens. And so I think people need to ask themselves critical questions around it. And so this is not necessarily what we need to do as people of African descent. I think that's different.
Okay.
So for everyone else, and I do mean everyone
else,
because anti-Black racism is a type of racism, a brand of racism that permeates all other cultures.
Exactly.
So there's no, let's save the indigenous people out of that, of this country, out of that. But generally speaking, you're going to find that anti-Black racism is part of every other culture. And so they need to really take a deep look at where that is. Do you have skin bleaching in your culture? Do you have Black caricatures in your lore, in your folklore? Do you fly a Confederate flag and not understand what it means? you really need to look and examine what are the traditions, what are the ways in which we interact with people of African descent, what's my family history with respect to that. Yeah. And so really coming to terms with that personal journey is first, because it doesn't matter how many policies we write in organizations or laws and so forth. If you do not accept or, not the word accept. Yeah, accept is good. If you do not appreciate the humanity of people of African descent, then we're always going to be going backwards and starting all over again with it. And then for people of African descent, I think it is a time to heal and a time to examine and understand the intergenerational trauma. Because this is not something that is just because someone calls you the N-word and then, oh, that was racism. We're talking about the years of economic deprivation, exclusion. What does that mean? What does it mean that 4 generations ago it was against the law to read, against the law to vote? You were hunted down. You were raped at will. You know, all of these things. Your body was used for experimentation. Things, you were stolen away. And so what does that mean? Because we know scientifically that our DNA carries the memories of those things. So that intergenerational trauma, that's what we need to heal from, and that's what we need to spend our time doing. And so 2 different missions.
Isn't there?
2 different actions,
And, you know, and I think that everybody thinks that I started this program because I have all the answers. Uplift Black is uplifting me too.
Right.
In my Blackness, in my experience with how I have treated my Black self, you know, and how I have wanted to just basically separate from my Blackness as much as possible. So this, you know, this journey has been happening for a long time for me as well. There's so much work for all of us to do, even within the Black community. So I'm so glad that you made a point to mention that we also have our own personal journeys. You know, I have a lot of people in my, you know, on my Facebook, in my family even, who don't necessarily, who are Black and don't necessarily understand Black Lives Matter or this movement. And, you know, when we have those conversations, that's what I say, you know, you can't unring the bell once you know, you know. So learning, educating yourself, because you're not gonna learn in school about what has happened to us as people, that's the first place to start. Knowing your history. You know, I had a beautiful visit with Janie Cooper Wilson. A few times she has taken time out of her time, schedule to show me Black history within Simcoe County, and right away she was like, "You gotta go to the farm." So it's really beautiful that you took the time to come out and speak with me today and share what you're doing. There's so much more that we could talk about, and I hope that we have more opportunities to do that. And we'll continue to work together with Uplift, and I know that we've got some fun things planned at the farm. So it's going to be great. But thank you so much. Is anything else you wanted to just kind of share at the end? Or
just want to say congratulations to you on the show and on the movement, and may it have many, many legs, lots of support, and yes, I am also looking forward to working together.
Perfect. We're going to change the world. All right. I give you a dabs, but COVID, right? Like, elbow dabs or whatever. There we go. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to Uplift Black. Just a reminder that you got to share, you got to support, and you have to show up. Thanks. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Ginelle.
You're welcome.
Love it. Yeah.